Hey guys, Suze here. Welcome back to another Keto Dinner Ideas video. If you're new here, we make these every single week to give you a little motivation and inspiration to get in the kitchen and get your keto meal prep on. This is a look at all of the keto dinners that we cooked in my house this week. I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and join our crew so you never miss our weekly Keto Dinner Idea videos. And let's go ahead and get into it. First up, we made this awesome chicken with artichoke hearts and feta. This is an adaptation from a recipe by Skinny Taste. So to start with, I have 1.5 pounds of chicken tenderloins here. I opted to use these instead of chicken thighs because I don't care for chicken thighs. And these are the artichoke hearts I'm using. They have great macros and they were a really good price for this quantity from Costco wholesale because artichoke hearts are pretty pricey, guys. I just have my chicken tenderloins in a little dish. I measured out 6 ounces of the artichoke hearts, and then I'm also going to fill this up with that same amount of the oil that they marinated in, and I'm pouring that over my chicken, and I'm just leaving the artichoke hearts halves and quarters kind of intact right now, and I'm going to stick this to the side and let it marinate for about half an hour. Now after that was done marinating, I decided that I did want to reserve my marinade and use it to season my steamed cauliflower rice that I'm going to serve with the chicken. So I just went ahead and got a small saucepan and emptied this oil into it, and we're just going to boil this later and make sure that it's cooked all the way through so all the bacteria and stuff is out of it, and we will use it on our cauliflower rice. Now to our remaining chicken and artichokes, I'm adding a teaspoon of minced garlic along with a teaspoon of dried oregano. And I'm getting in there with my hands and just making sure all of my chicken tenderloins are nice and evenly seasoned. And once they are, I'm taking a baking sheet, I lined it with nonstick foil, and I'm just laying out all of my chicken tenders kind of evenly spaced onto the baking sheet. And I broke apart my artichoke hearts in between each of them, washed my hands really well, and now I am topping them with some Himalayan pink sea salt and some ground black pepper. I'm gonna pop these into a broiler for 10 minutes first go round. I did it 6 inches from the top. Always keep your door cracked. While I'm doing that, I went ahead and started boiling that marinade. And you can see the Parmesan cheese bits that were in it are bubbling up to the top. We'll let those cook all the way and then remove them. And after pulling my chicken out for the first go round, I am flipping it. And I'm gonna pop it back under the broiler for another 10 minutes. And here it is after that. I'm going to flip it back over to the original side that we started cooking it on. And then I'm going to top this all with about 1/4 cup of crumbled feta cheese. This is my favorite part. And then I'm going to pop this back under the broiler. I think I probably did about 3 minutes. You could do a minute just to get the inside of that feta nice and warm and creamy and the outside a little browned. Meanwhile, I took some cauliflower rice I steamed in the microwave. I am pouring that marinade that we boiled down over it, adding a little bit of just regular ground black pepper and a little bit of regular table salt to it, mixing that together, spilling it everywhere. And here's our chicken out of the oven all done. Here it is plated up. I just served a couple chicken tenders with 2 of the artichoke heart pieces over the cauliflower rice. This turned out excellent. Looks a lot fancier than it takes. This is perfect for a keto weeknight meal if you just need to throw something together because you don't have to marinate the chicken that long. And of course, it also stores and reheats well for doing a weekly meal prep. Next up, we attempted Carolyn Ketchum, brilliant keto chef, low carb tamale pie. So to start with, in a dish, I'm taking a couple tablespoons of tomato paste, and I did spray my tablespoon with a little cooking spray to help it release easier, adding 1/2 cup of water to that and whisking it all together to make a little sauce. Then we're gonna just stick this to the side. Taking a cast iron skillet, I am adding 1.5 pounds of ground pork to that. You could use beef, you could use chicken. I felt like making it with pork. Using my handy dandy meat chopper upper, I always have linked in the description box to break that apart and brown it. And I'm doing this over just medium to medium high heat. And to that, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of taco seasoning. Now, I actually pre-mixed some. If you watch me, you know I always just make my own taco seasoning. You could use whichever low carb variety you have or make your own. Even though mine has chili powder in it, I'm adding an additional tablespoon of chili con carne. I always specify because people have asked me to. Chili powder. And then just mixing that all the way in until it's nice and brown and cooked through. I left all of the grease in the pan, adding that tomato paste mixture we made. And I'm gonna mix that together. And then I'm just going to use my spoon to even this all out and kind of pat it down on my skillet before topping it with a cup of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. I did turn the heat off of this, by the way, as soon as I added the tomato paste mixture. We're just gonna let this sit for a second, and in a mixing bowl, I'm adding 2/3 a cup of coconut flour and 1/3 a cup of almond flour, along with a tablespoon of granulated swerve, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 of a teaspoon xanthan gum, and 1/4 of a teaspoon sea salt, and I'm whisking that all together. To that, I am adding 4 large eggs, and I'm just gonna pop the yolks of those and go ahead and whisk them in for a second before adding 6 tablespoons of butter. I just used unsalted butter and melted it on the stove, along with 3/4 a cup unsweetened almond milk. I always buy that in bulk at Costco too, and it's the unrefrigerated kind, works perfectly. Whisked it, took a big spoon, creamed it together, and now I'm just gonna dump this into big dollops on top of our skillet of our meat mixture, and then use my spoon to kind of mash those down. I really don't want to disrupt the bottom layer, so I'm gonna mash it in and then use a rubber spatula to kind of spread it across, just like you would if you were making like a shepherd's pie or something like that. I laugh because my husband hates shepherd's pie and will probably cringe at even hearing it if he watches this video. Now, once I have it all spread on the top evenly, I'm popping it into a 325-degree oven for 45 minutes. Here's what it looks like when it comes out. It's nice and brown on the edges. Here it is plated up. I topped mine with a little bit of sour cream. There's some dried cilantro on here for presentation, even though I'm not a huge fan of cilantro. This was excellent. I didn't know if it would be as good stored in the refrigerator and reheated, but it was. It's even better if you add a little taco sauce on top and let it soak into that coconut flour crust. As always, Carolyn Ketchum, brilliant keto genius. Check out our website and our recipe link down below. All day I dream about food. Next up, making some ham and egg cups. This is a recipe adaptation from the Country Cook. So I opted to use Canadian bacon for these. I'm sure the original recipe they used like regular whole slices of ham, and it would actually make a whole cup to cook your eggs in. I opted to do this. Make sure you check your carbs carefully on any processed meat, and especially these hams, and get the lowest carbs possible. Once I have those all into I opted to use a silicone baking muffin thing because my metal one is just an embarrassment. I topped each of them with a tablespoon of shredded sharp cheddar cheese. Over here I have a bowl with 10 large eggs cracked into it, and I'm using this little, I finally broke down and bought a coffee frother. It had a little beater attachment. I'm using it. I'm not going to link this down below because I'm not really happy with this product. It's kind of wobbly, but it worked for today. To that, I am adding a 1/2 cup of sliced up green onions. It was just a couple stalks. I sliced up the white, the light green, the dark green, stuck it all in there. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Whisked that in as well. And now I am just going to use this cool little ladle thingy that I found in a kitchen drawer. I think it might have come with my Instant Pot. Anyway, it was perfect to kind of evenly distribute the egg mixture between my muffin cups. I do have my silicone muffin pan on a baking sheet to stabilize it because they tend to get a little wonky in the oven if not. And this was the first time I made this recipe, so I wasn't sure how far to fill them up. So you see I kind of took my time and tried to get the green onion evenly distributed amongst the 6 muffins. I popped this into a 350-degree oven. I ended up cooking mine for 30 minutes. Here it is plated up. Adjust your cooking times if need be. I put in there 25 to start with, and it was still, I felt needed a little bit longer. I'm just cutting into the middle of it so you can see the texture. The eggs are cooked perfectly. I even enjoyed these heated up. I think they would be great to meal prep, even a double recipe of these and have them in the fridge for all week. Served with a little steamed broccoli. Last up, I have an original recipe for you guys I am working on for our cookbook. That, is always a work in progress, but I figured I would go ahead and share it with you guys. This is a keto red cauliflower rice and sausage, and for it I'm using this Teton's Waters Ranch 100% grass-fed beef Polish sausage. Found this at Costco. It is pricey. Look at these macros and these clean ingredients though. I've been wanting to try this and was stoked to write a recipe for it. If you buy it at Costco, pretty reasonable for the high quality product that you're getting. I don't know where else it's sold. It's separated into 3 different packages. I'm using 4 links for this recipe. You can see I actually weighed them out. It is 3/4 of a pound. Chopped them up roughly into about 1 to 1.5 inch chunks. I'm taking a large saucepan over medium-high heat, putting all of my cut up sausage into it and just cooking it until it gets some nice charred kind of places on it. As you can see in my pot, the sausage does not release a whole lot of grease. It's just so clean. Removed it to the same pot. I'm adding about a tablespoon of avocado oil just because that's what I had on the stove, but you could even use extra virgin olive oil, and a couple tablespoons of no salt added butter. Once that got nice and brown and foamy, I have my heat turned down to medium, and I am adding 1/4 of a cup diced, just regular yellow or white onion. It's diced, but it's still, pretty coarsely chopped. And I'm just stirring that around for probably just about a minute before adding 1/2 a cup of also diced up bell pepper. And I'm just cooking this for a couple minutes until my bell pepper gets nice and fragrant. To that, I'm adding a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic. This is more like a teaspoon and a half. And mixing that in and cooking it for an additional 30 seconds to a minute until that is nice and fragrant. You want to make sure you don't burn your garlic. And then to that mixture, I am adding 2 cups of steamed cauliflower rice that I went ahead and steamed lightly in the microwave, and just stirring from the bottom to make sure my cauliflower rice is fully coated in the fats of all of that before adding a couple tablespoons of tomato paste I had left over and 1/2 a cup of chopped up tomatoes with their juice. Stirring that all in. We're still on medium heat. Make sure you double check if you used canned tomatoes that there's no added sugar to those. And I know you're probably thinking, oh, this is a high carb keto recipe. It's got onions, it's got peppers, it's got tomatoes. It is higher than what I normally cook, but it still comes out to about 7 net carbs per serving. To this, I'm using Tony's Creole seasoning and a tablespoon of that. I'm not adding any additional salt or pepper to this recipe as it's already included in this seasoning mix. Stirring that all in really well. Before adding 1/4 of a cup broth, I used low sodium chicken broth. You could use a beef broth or a bone broth. This is what I had open in the fridge when I started making this recipe. Stirring that in before adding back my sausage. And I'm gonna stir this from the bottom and actually bring this to a bubble before turning it down to maybe about 4 on my stove and let it simmer about 25 minutes to half an hour just to get some of the excess liquid out to get the texture that I wanted. And here it is plated up. This was absolutely excellent. I liked it better left over the next day after those flavors had melded together even more. I will continue tweaking this for our eventual cookbook, but I figured I would just go ahead and share this version with you now as it's already pretty excellent. In the future, I might cut the tomato paste in half to lower these net carbs even more and just see how that tastes. If you make this, leave me any feedback that you have on it. And I hope you enjoyed this week's Keto Dinner Ideas video. Make sure you are subscribed to our channel with your notifications bell on so you never miss one of our weekly keto dinner cooking videos. I love you guys. Thank you so much for your support and coming back week after week. Until next time, bye.